right, guys, we are at Fort Pulaski between Tybee Island and Savannah, Georgia. And we're going to give you a tour of not only the markers that are here, but also a tour of the fort itself. And I think you're going to be fascinated. This is a really, really, really cool Civil War battle site, and the story behind it is really cool. Yeah, this fort was built by the United States War Department in response to the War of 1812, along with a bunch of other forts. But it is quite the amazing feat of architecture. So stay tuned. Hope you like it. We'll catch up with you later.
And I'm going to show you guns and ventilation. Let's talk ventilation. I mentioned on these holes before. Now that you saw that this is an arch on top of an arch, you've got this little space that's below. Just like a parking garage. When you go into a parking garage, it's always a much chillier than the outside ambient air. Well, they took advantage of that here. So throughout the fort, you're going to see these little slits. The idea there is that air is going to blow over the wall. It's going to come along the ground. It's going to get sucked up underneath here because of air pressure. It's colder air. It gets chilled while it's down there. And then while the air is being chilled below, it's going to pop up through a bunch of holes in the wood deck. And you'll see some of those holes. Here, you'll see some in the boards there. So whenever you're walking around over here, you can see how you're pointing out the holes there. The idea is this cold air is now going to rise into the space. It's going to push the hotter air that's above us through a vent at the top of the fort there. And it becomes a venturi system. It becomes a passive cooling system and smoke clearing system that's automatically going on without any mechanics. And it can move an extraordinary amount of air through here. If you came during the summer inside of the officers' quarters, for instance, it's going to be a good 5 to 7 degrees cooler than the ambient air on the outside without any fans or anything. So it's a very clever system, and these things make a lot of smoke as well, too. So you need to be able to clear out that smoke. What's weird, the two biggest questions I'm ever asked about Fort Pulaski is, one, where's the bathrooms, as you can imagine, and the second one is, what is this hole? So if you come over here and look, you can go on either side of it. What is this little space that's here? And everybody keeps asking me this. And what it is, and this is to your comment, sir, about how you move the gun. Underneath here, where this hole is a post that's sticking up. What you see here is a tongue that is then hooked around that hole. The idea is where the pivot point for the cannon is exactly where the muzzle is. So it can give you very accurate firing. You never have to worry about that. You just have to worry about how big of a charge that you're going to try to fire with whatever weapon that you're using, and then the angle of the flight will determine just how far it can go. In this case, this is a smoothbore cannon, and you could get somewhat accurate within about 1,000 yards. I like to call this the basketball. All the smoothbore cannons is like a basketball. They're big, they're round. If you're at the free throw line, you're probably going to hit baskets. If you're at half court, you might hit baskets. If you're way at the other end of the court, good luck. You may every once in a while. And that's what happens with these. They don't have much of a range. I'll talk about the football cannons in a little bit, because that's what changed the world around here. So that's how this works. So you would end up, your team would be here. You would have the gunner. You'd have 6 to 8 people working this gun to load the thing.
How many people did it take to move this gun?
There were 6 to 8 people working on the crew. This gun could be moved by 2 husky young men because it's a steel wheel on a steel rail like a railroad car, so it actually is really quite smooth. They're pretty much glued down today because of rust. But it didn't take a lot of guys to move it, and then you can see here there's a crank, and that's how you would deal with the elevation of the gun, and that would determine how far you're going to be able to throw that in this particular case, an 80-pound cannonball. So it didn't take a lot of guys. It's like I said, it's glued down. On the howitzer like that over there, it only took 1 guy to aim the gun left to right, but that also had a crew of about 6 people working on that one as well, too. So you're sitting here, you're firing away, air's coming up through, it's pulling all the smoke out. You can continue to see your enemy. You have a lot of ability to do things fairly quickly. The howitzer, you can launch off about 4 cannonballs a minute. This one, you would probably take you about a minute and a half or so. But this was designed to blow up ships, because when you're looking out there today and you see where that grass is and those trees, that was water, that was the ocean. It was that close.
Yeah.
So, and I'll show you a photo of this. This is a photo from the back corner up there. But you can see when you take all the trees and
Oh.
the landfill that came in from the Savannah River, the ocean's just right there.
Now, the cannon had to come all the way back for them to load it.
No, they would, they would do, what they would end up doing is they would bring it up a short way to be able to get to the muzzle, to use the sponge to clean it, and to be able to put the charge in it. And then this, they wouldn't bring it all the way back. This is for the recoil. So once they fire the gun, the recoil would bring it all the way back. Then they would bring it down about halfway, do the cleaning, load the new charge in, have the gunner set where he wants it to go using these things, and then he'll have his crew guys here, and they're going to be ready to push the gun left or right as necessary.
Yeah. Is this all original?
This is all original. Almost all of our guns here, a few of them were here during the war itself. Others, we have a great collection of guns. The funniest one is, it's called a Parrot gun. It's one of the aimable rifles, the football one. It's up on the top up there. That's actually made out of fiberglass. So it's the
That's a
only-
reproduction.
It's the only reproduction. It's the only fake gun that we have. The gun that you see that's next to the flag, not the one right next to the flag, the mortar, but the rifle there, the Parrot rifle, that's the largest rifle cannon in the national park system that can be fired. That's the gun that did a lot of the damage to the fort, which I'm now about to show you next. So let's walk through the casemate here. And then have you stand right here. One of the great things about Fort Pulaski, it's one of the reasons I decided I wanted to volunteer here, is there's very few places in the world where you're going to be able to go where the world changed overnight. I was at the Trinity site where they launched the first atomic bomb and was standing next to the pylon that you see photos of General Leslie Groves and Robert Oppenheimer. And that's when it hit me that Fort Pulaski is exactly like the Trinity site. Before then, warfare was basically a blunt instrument. You had a bunch of basketballs and you threw as many basketballs as you could at the enemy to the best of your ability. After the battle here, it all became about precision, because when the Confederate soldiers took over this about 3 months before Fort Sumter, and before Georgia even succeeded from the Union, they spent 15 months repairing this fort because of its poor condition. They had no guns in the fort at that time that were not rusted, so they had to replace all those. The moat was so filled with dirt you could walk across the moat. They got this thing up into quote-unquote ship shape, and they were ready. They were planning on the idea that the Union was going to try to attack Savannah by trying to burst past this fort with their ironclads, their kind of new boat technology. They had all the guns kind of aimed towards the north end over there, and that's what their focus was. That's how they thought the war was going to happen. But there was a guy named Quincy Gilmore. He was an engineer for the Union Army, and he was one of those kind of nerdy guys. And he'd been reading about how Europeans were playing with a newer technology, the rifled cannon. And a rifled cannon is much like a football. It's a pointy bullet, basically. It goes through the barrel, and the barrel has grooves in it. Those grooves spin the gun, the bullet that's coming out, the projectile that's coming out. It allows you to go from 1,000 yards with somewhat accuracy to 5 miles with very good accuracy. So they are much more powerful, much easier to aim, much more accurate when you're going to aim. And Gilmore said, okay, we're not going to be able to go through the back door of this fort. That's not going to work. We could take all the boats that we have in the Union Navy and try to get past the front of this, but this thing was built so well, that's probably not going to work. Let's try an experiment. So he ordered a bunch of what are known as Parrot guns and James rifled cannons. Had them moved over to Tybee Island, which is about 1.5 miles from us over there. The Confederate soldiers didn't care, because you go, if you want to go on Tybee and you've got smoothbore guns, the basketball guns, you can fire them all the day long and they're just going to bounce off the side of this wall. You could take mortars, which are the shorter, stubbier cannons that shoot the load straight up in the air and hop over the fence, but this thing was designed for mortars. You could lodge a 200-pound mortar on the top of this fort, and it's just going to land there. In fact, the Confederates, in I think kind of not a joking way, but serious for them, but I think it's kind of funny, is this parade ground, they dug channels into that dirt so that when the mortar fires would come over and land on the parade grounds, they would just get the cannonballs that were shot at them, clean them up and stick them in their own mortars and fire them back at the Union soldiers. So even Robert E. Lee, when he came back and he was in charge of the Army, he came to the fort and he assured Colonel Olmsted, he says, Well, they can attack this fort. It's like attacking the Rocky Mountains. They're never going to make it. They did not have at the time the imagination that somebody would start to use for the very first time in warfare the rifled cannons. So warfare before April 10th and 11th, 1862 was a blunt instrument. Let's throw all the basketballs that we can at them. After that date, warfare became all about precision. There is a target that's specific, let's aim for that target, let's destroy that target, and then move on to the next target. That's how we conduct warfare today. What happened is, over that 30-hour battle, this wall that you see here, completely blown out. A 30-foot hole was blasted through this here. Destroyed all that. You can see some of the damage in this photo from the time itself. They hit one of the cannons upstairs, and if you're doing the upstairs walk, there's one of the cannons, it hit the muzzle of the cannon, it blew the iron cannon up, and you can see that upstairs. What really ended the war on the battle of this was that there was a big hole right over here. These were replaced by Union soldiers because this was an important part of the fort. This was structural. And if you look straight across over there, and if I was on Tybee Island, I could see you straight there. I could see all the way into this fort, and where there's kids towards that back corner, there was 40,000 pounds of gunpowder stored in the powder magazine, and one of the projectiles landed within feet of the front door of that. That's when the Confederates decided that maybe this is not the hill that we want to stand on. This whole thing is going to blow up. That's why warfare changed. That's why this is a very, very important national monument, because ever since then, we fight precision wars. We don't fight just mass wars anymore. At this point, what I'd like to do is try to highlight some of the things that I think you should go see when you're continuing on your tour and on your adventure in the park. First of all, the blindage, which is these logs that are up here. During the war, this is what the Confederates have done. It's a way of protecting the casements from bombings. You put up the boards, you pile up a bunch of dirt on it. Off in the field here, you can see this is those trenches that I was talking about that was capturing all those mortar balls. In the post-battle report, Gilmore said that the mortars that the Union fired were pretty worthless. They didn't really do any damage at all. He claimed it was just the Parrott rifles, that gun over there, and the James cannons were the ones that did all the damage, and that's what changed war. So, things to do when the tour is done. Well, first of all, if you want to go upstairs to the terraplane, just keep in mind there's no handrail, so please don't try to fall over the edges. That would be really embarrassing. I understand that's never happened, but we have had people fall into the moat a few times, apparently. But if you do go up, and I highly recommend this, the stairwell itself. This is the original stairwell. Once again, a door design, so you can't take an axe to it. And then when you look at the spirals in there, that is not held up by a metal pole and rocks. Those are all custom made, and they're fitted and interlocked with each other. Just a brilliant piece of engineering. So going upstairs is great views of Hilton Head that way, Tybee Island. You'll be able to see the lighthouse, the Cockspur Lighthouse from up there as well too. As you continue along this direction, there's a few things that I think that are pretty cool. One of them is there's going to be a room that represents what the Union soldiers' barracks look like. There's also historic graffiti. There'll be a sign for all of these things. There's historic graffiti. Look for that. My favorite part of the graffiti is the star of the unit that was over there. But there's another sign that says "This way out." And it points to the hole, which is not the way out. So I guess they had a sense of humor as well there. There's also throughout the casements here a whole bunch of our different cannons in our collection, so you can see the different sizes of cannons and things. Towards the very end over there is a room that shows you how do you pick up and move these gigantic heavy beasts. That explains it there. That corner back there is the casemate that was where the gunpowder was at, and you can put your head inside of there and see where the gunpowder is at. That entire side of the back area there, that's where the junior soldiers were. So you'll be able to see the hospital that was here, have a chance to visit the chapel. The quartermaster's office and his goods are still in there as well. You can walk through all of those. The 11 o'clock program, I think Chip, if he's smart, will end up doing it in the guard room, which is where that guy's just walking through right now. Chip lives here, so he has a different concept of the cold and the warm, and he might have you be sitting outside, so I don't know what he's going to do with it.
All right, we did some of the tour that was handled around here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to the top, get some footage looking off of the top of the fort, and then I'm going to go out and walk around the back and show you some of the damage that was done during the brief battle. I want to go up this circular stairway here. Has no metal support in it. It's entirely held up by itself. I can see a little bit better here at how this was built. Okay, there we go. And you can see how it was built. Okay. Oh. There's some cannons along here. Let's see if we can get a little view out over the top here for you. I don't know what I'm gonna get. All right, I want to come up to this corner over here. Might actually get to see a little better. And this map, let's see here, get down here, where it shows you kind of where you're looking at. And the different directions things are. So from where I'm standing, Hilton Head, straight that way. All right. And then there's the couple islands, the North Channel that way. That's way out to the Atlantic Ocean in Tybee Island. So that's pretty cool. Well, guys, that was our tour of not just Fort Pulaski, but the markers at Fort Pulaski. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned a lot as much as I did. And stay tuned. Go on with us for other parts of our series as we look at more historical markers.